This is Special Chronicles, giving respect and a voice to people with special needs.
I shudder thinking how the world can be so cruel. I lend my voice to those who can't. It's time we try, it's time we care, it's time we stand. It starts with a voice.
Welcome to the Special Chronicles show. This is episode 496. My name is Daniel Spokowski. I'm the founder of Special Chronicles and a Special Olympics Sun Rival International Global Messenger. And before we begin and bring on our guests this week, a few housekeeping reminders. SpecialChronicles.com. Well, I've got that. You know what, folks? Just look in the description wherever you're listening to this. Can't find the banner at the moment. So SpecialChronicles.com for links to follow Special Chronicles on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and YouTube and LinkedIn. Now we're finally on LinkedIn, so you can follow us there. And also subscribe, rate, and review this podcast, Special Chronicles, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're just looking just on audio, you can also subscribe to our channel on YouTube to watch the live stream video episodes every Monday at 6 p.m. Central Time. And sign up for our newsletter to receive exclusive bonus content delivered to your inbox. Again, SpecialChronicles.com for links to subscribe and follow. Our guest this week on the Special Chronicles podcast is Wade and Ferris Joye from the Dreamers and Disciples podcast on the Access Mode Network. Wade Joye is a pastor, preacher, and author who spent 15 years serving as the worship pastor at Elevation Church. As the worship pastor, he oversaw the weekend worship experience teams, pastored worship leaders and creatives, and was instrumental in building and leading Elevation Worship. Wade and his wife Ferris have 3 daughters. They adore and are learning to navigate family, ministry, and faith as they raise children with special needs like Cystic Fibrosis and Cerebral Palsy, as we will learn about their story on this episode. So please put your virtual hands together as we welcome Wade and his wife Ferris to the Special Chronicles podcast. Welcome, Wade and Ferris.
Hello.
Hello. We're so excited to be here, Daniel. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I came across both of your stories I've subscribed to, I've been listening to podcasts for, I don't know, at least 14 years, as long as I've been podcasting myself. And I subscribed to a few of the Access More podcasts, and that's why I came across your new podcast.
Oh, awesome.
So,
yeah, I remember you were one of the first people to reach out when it just launched, and I was really nervous. I didn't know if anybody was going to listen to it. But you're very encouraging.
Yeah, I'm behind on. We're recording this the 27th of September, so I haven't caught up on your latest 2 episodes, but they're in my queue to listen.
Yeah, you'll have to give Wade some tips, because you said you're on your 400th episode.
Yeah. 496 official episode. Yeah.
That's amazing.
I'm on episode 11, so you're a little bit ahead of me.
a little bit. Yeah. Coming up this November is the anniversary of when I started this, and so recording the 500th official episode, and I'm actually going to be doing it. I probably won't have video, but I'm going to be recording bits when I'm in Missouri, because I'm for Special Olympics. I'll be traveling with my dad, and I'm giving a keynote at a leadership summit, and so I will be recording bits, and then. Oh,
that's awesome.
Yeah, and then I just found out basically when the next day after I fly home from Missouri, I'm speaking at the Coca-Cola company down in Atlanta. So it's kind of a crazy month, but yeah.
That is a crazy month. Wow.
So why don't we begin? And I'm sure if any of your listeners or fans that they know both of you, but I'm sure a lot of our audience will be first hearing about you and your story for the first time. So why don't you, before we get into more of your story, just give us a brief introduction of yourself and what disabilities your children were diagnosed with and your connection to our special needs community.
Yeah. So, my name is Wade and this is Ferris. We've been married for 17 years now, and we've got 3 girls. We have, I'm surrounded by women in our house.
Lots of talking.
Yeah. But, we have twins. Liana, they're 14 now. And then Sydney is 9. She'll be 10 in about a month. And she's really the one that kind of runs our house. So,
so true.
Ferris can kind of walk you through what each of them what they've experienced in terms of their health and everything.
Yeah. So like Wade said, we have twins that are 14. And so they were born 3 months premature. So we dealt with the whole NICU thing. And we found out that one of them, our daughter Liana, had a grade 4 brain bleed. So she deals with cerebral palsy, and it manifests itself by having just weakness on her right side. So it's harder for her to use her right hand. And we've had surgeries for her foot because she would kind of go tiptoe when she walked. So that we're kind of navigating that with her. And then our youngest one, that's 9, Sydney, she has cystic fibrosis, and that's just a genetic condition that affects the cells that produce your mucus, and it makes it sticky and harder to deal with. And so it can affect your lungs and your digestive system. And so we have to do breathing treatments and a lot of medicines for her. And then our other one, that's like I guess termed the healthy one, the other twin, her name's Adley. She actually still had all the NICU premature stuff that she was dealing with. And she had a big intestinal surgery and she had a big heart surgery. So technically now she's kind of doing, a lot better, but she had her own little things that she dealt with as well. So we've kind of got a little bit of our knowledge in a few different areas. So it's been interesting. It's been relying on God for tons of stuff, lots of prayers, but they're doing really well.
Awesome.
And that's their diagnosis.
Awesome.
Yeah, I remember when when the twins were born, we were already terrified that they were born. So they were born at 27 weeks, and Liana was 1 pound, 14 ounces, and Adley was 2 pounds, 5 ounces. And about 3 days into that, when they sat down and told us about Liana's brain bleed, they said that that they didn't think that she would ever walk or talk. And they told us to consider taking her off life support, which is something you are shocked to hear as a parent. And obviously we refused to do that and just committed to praying for our kids. And so our church really rallied around us during that time, and their faith helped get us through it. And so to walk through that, and then 4 years later, when we finally had the courage to have another child, and then for Sydney to be diagnosed with cystic fibrosis, that was a big blow to our faith at the time, and trying to figure out, God, we walked through this with the twins, and now there's this condition that feels even scarier to us. How do we process that? So it was hard, but the Lord was really faithful through it all, and has our children are just amazing gifts to us. And we've learned more about God through their story than anything else. And so it's been a difficult journey at times, but a really beautiful one.
Awesome. I can relate to a little bit of your story. I was born 3 1/3 months premature, a lot earlier than your daughters, but in the same NICU, my parents spent months in there, and having still having scars and tubes and kind of the similar. So this was without giving my age too much, but this was in 89. So this was, much earlier than your daughters, but kind of the similar I think my mom and my dad, my parents will like even advise to like boat me, and it's a kind of like the similar type of. You said your twins are 14 now, so 14 years ago. Yeah. So it's quite much after I was born, but it's still kind of. It sounds like it's a similar type of story.
Yeah, it was.
Well, what's crazy with Sydney's cystic fibrosis is it's actually, I feel like she's been born in an era where they're doing a lot of advancements in medicine for her. And so her life expectancy, if she had been born, 20 years ago, wouldn't have been very good. Yeah. I think they were, children that were not surviving, past like 5 years old or something. And so to have her born in this time, and when she was born, our hospital like opened up a cystic fibrosis unit. And so it just all happened in like really amazing timing. And so, but that's kind of scary to think if she had been born at any other time, the advancements weren't there.
Yeah. I had, there was a young, I think she's a teenager, and a few years ago, I had her on who has cystic fibrosis. Her name's Ella, and I think she lives up in Minnesota in the northern region. And I forgot, this is, what episode did I say this was, 496? I forgot which episode she was on, but if you just on specialchronicles.com, just do a search for cystic fibrosis. I think I put that in the title or keyword of the episode, so you should be able to find it just because I can't remember it. So you can just search for it on our website. But we'll get into much more of your story. We'll take a short break to let our listeners know how they can support this podcast. And our guests are Wade Joye and his wife Ferris from the Dreamers and Disciples podcast on the Accessible Network, right here on the Special Chronicles podcast and specialchronicles.com. We'll be back after this short break. Whoa. It's a plane. Oh, let's try that again. Quick break from our conversation today to learn how you can become a Special Chronicles supporter so we can continue to produce this podcast. Support for Special Chronicles comes from listeners like you. As an independent public media podcast, Special Chronicles will always be there for you. Now we're asking you to be there for us. As a nonprofit independent media organization, we can only make programs like Special Chronicles with listener support. Our programs provide weekly, candid, honest, and inspiring conversations about the people with disabilities community that creates awareness, support, and advocacy within each week's episode. Listeners tell us our shows are an enjoyable and necessary podcast for the intellectual and developmental disability community and everyone else who is able to listen to stories about life from a different angle. Please, if you and your family love our weekly podcast, make a one-time, monthly, or annual gift of thanks today. Support this podcast at specialchronicles.com/give. That's specialchronicles.com/give. And now, back to the show to continue the conversation today. And back to the show. Our guests this week are Wade and his wife Joye. Ferris from the Dreamers and Disciples podcast. And in the first segment, you shared a little bit about your backstory with your 3 daughters and the special needs that they were diagnosed with. So, since you kind of already shared the both stories, one of the whenever we have guests on this podcast, and a lot of whether it's other Special Olympics athletes or just others, we always talk about the challenges, because it gives people a foundation, because like that's a lot of times the challenges, either like myself with learning disabilities or severe language disorder, or like your daughters, the challenges is the first thing that they see, but then we talk about the joys and accomplishments. So share a little bit about some of the challenges, but then also the joys and accomplishments that your three daughters have because of the disabilities that they and I like using the word special needs, like I'm sure you guys do, because it's more of a positive tone. But share with us some of the challenges and joys and accomplishments because of their special needs.
Yeah, I think growing up with daughters, I think one of the things that's or raising them is like you want them to feel like they are beautiful and have confidence, and we're trying to pour into them that God made them perfectly. And so when you add in some kind of like disability, we always wonder like what that is like for them in their mind. Like, are they thinking, why am I like this? Or, just dealing with all of that internal battle of not feeling pretty or confident or whatever it is. And so I think that that's something that as parents, we're trying to figure out as we parent to make sure, because one of the issues that we have with Liana is it can be a lot harder for her to do things that her friends just find very easy to do, like even swimming in a swimming pool. Like for her, that's really hard because she might need to go to the edge and hold on, but she can only hold on with one hand, or, they're play fighting. And so it's harder for her to stay afloat if she's not able to use her right side as well. We even have like at dinner time, she still needs us to cut up some of her food. And so if you're going over to your friend's house as a teenager and you need the parent to cut your food, that can be hard for a teenager to deal with. And so I feel like we're kind of like coming into this new season of a lot of her needing to become more independent and us not going to always be there to help her with all of that stuff. Like even when we think about she's 14, so next year we're driving a car. So we're like, what does that look like? And what adaptations are we going to need for her to do some of that stuff and feel really confident as she walks into that? So I know that that's, we're seeing it from the parent aspect. And I know she has her own journey that she's going on as well. So we're just, I don't think we always do it right, but I hope that we're at least building a really good foundation for her to go into life to feel like, any obstacle, I can figure out a way to overcome it and I can push past it. And so if we can at least help her, teach her those things, then that's great. And then with Sydney, I feel like with her, she just has a lot of like medical stuff that she has to do. So with her, a lot of things that we deal with is like she has a G tube. And so we have to figure out if we go, on vacation or she goes anywhere, like we still have to feed her milk through her G tube and we have to carry a humongous breathing treatment machine. And if we had seasons where she calls it affectionately her G tube, her tubie. And so if her tubie would fall out, then we were like, oh gosh, get a new tubie and put it in. And so just a lot of like things that I just never knew, I think going into parenthood that we would have to be thinking about. And so, so I think that that's like, I guess you go into being a parent and you think it's just, all like hold the baby, teach them how to walk, teach them how to do this stuff. And so you have an expectation of one thing, and one of our, struggles that we've had is just learning that the expectation is different than what your reality is going to be. Right.
Yeah.
And so, just learning how to parent all of that is, a journey. And like I said before, just trying to make sure that they see it as, even though they deal with this, they're still, just strong, beautiful young ladies, and they're going to be strong, beautiful young women. And so I don't know what you have to add to that, Wade.
No, I think all that is well said. I think, with Sydney too, a lot of our daily schedule has to be oriented around her treatments. So she has her 2 breathing treatments a day, and that takes 30 minutes to an hour. So each time. And so everything gets structured around that. During COVID, because she was at such high risk, even though I was out doing ministry at church, the rest of the family was pretty much at the house for almost 2 years with very minimal contact because we wanted to protect Sydney. And so those were a lot of the things that there were challenges relationally there, just with their friends and things like that. And so, thankfully we're all back out and, they're with their friends and everything now, but there are those kind of challenges that we had to walk through with her bigger sister saying, hey, we want to keep Sydney safe. So you might not be able to do some of the things you want to do in this season. But all of it for us with the challenges, this is kind of segueing a bit more into the positive side of things is I see so much strength in them and a wisdom and a maturity that's so far beyond their years because, like we talk about Sydney being very feisty, and she is feisty, but she's also strong. And like she has a strength of character at 9 years old that I never had anywhere close to that age. And Liana, she has a grace to be able to see people who are hurting and identify that and show compassion to people that I think is a really beautiful thing. And I think and all three of them, Adley too, just have this sensitivity to God that I think is such a beautiful gift.
Awesome. I want to touch on a couple of things you said. One is you said that you've noticed the strength of your daughters, and something in the advocating, or whether I'm podcasting or speaking at conferences or schools or groups, I say is communication is my biggest struggle, but it's also my biggest passion. So really taking that obstacle and kind of toning it into a strength. And so I don't, and I'm sure you probably see that in your daughters too, that challenge and as they kind of slowly kind of take that challenge and discover that into their strengths. I don't know if you want to add on.
Well, even like seeing, let's take Liana for an example. While she might not gravitate towards certain athletic things that, other kids may do or Adley might do, I found her instead discover this creative side of her that, this imagination and this, big personality and everything. So one way somebody might look at that as a limitation, but if anything, to me, it's not that. It's like, it's a way for her to lean into all these strengths that she might not have seen if she had been able to do these other things easily. Instead, it's allowed her that challenge, like you said, has allowed her to access a whole different side of her that is really beautiful.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to also comment on that.
Yeah, I feel like when Wade mentioned just the COVID thing too, I think that was something that we could have kind of thrown ourselves a little pity party, just being like, oh, we can't do a lot or we're stuck at home, which I know most people were stuck at home. It's just ours was an extended period of being stuck at home. And but I think we kind of had to talk about like, this is a season and we're going to like rally together as a family and try and make this fun. And so I think like we took something that could have been, we were really upset about or, got bored or whatever. And we turned it into something like beautiful for our family. So when we did birthday parties and we were just our family, we tried to make them as big and fun as we could. And then I think the girls too, like if you have 3 sisters in the house, you're probably going to have a lot of drama and fighting sometimes, but we kind of had to have a conversation and say, look, these are going to be the people you're hanging out with all the time. And so you get to choose, like, do you want to fight and have the drama, or do you want to like embrace this and just enjoy being together? And so I feel like they really did. They decided, hey, this is our like journey and we're doing this together and we're going to be here at our house. So let's make this the best we can. So they had like Wade was talking about, they just started using their imagination and came up with all kinds of fun things that they could do with it. Was just the 3 of them. And so I think that's really beautiful when you can take something that's a hardship and, put a spin on it and make it something really beautiful.
Awesome. I to sum up this before we quickly move on to the rest of the segment before our next break. kind of related. Those a song by Matthew West called "Walking Miracles." I don't know if either of you have heard the song. I had Matthew on this podcast a couple, maybe about 2 years ago. So you can go back and listen to that episode that he was on just before he launched his show. But he really talked about the how of that that song, and he wrote it about the story of I think a young boy with CP in Arizona, I think. So the music video to his song was pretty powerful too. But I don't know if you guys have heard that song that Matthew West wrote called "Walking Miracles," or if you want to comment on that as relates to you.
No, I haven't heard that one.
Yeah, it's a pretty. When I heard it, I could relate to my own story. But it's called "Walking Miracles."
Even though I haven't heard the song, the title really resonates with me because that's how we refer to our daughters a lot, as walking miracles. Like they are living reminders that what a doctor says is not the last word over your life.
Yeah.
A condition is not the last word over your life. It's they're miracles and they're answers to prayer. And a lot of can focus done and get God is doing. And so like Psalm 103:2 says, let all that I am praise the Lord. May I never forget the good things he does for me. And so they're not just a miracle that God did in the past, they're walking miracles now. And so that's such a great picture.
Awesome. Yeah. I'm glad that you highlighted that, because I think a lot of people can really learn that just because of the special needs, the challenges that your daughters have, that I have, that so many others across the country, across the globe have, really all those living, breathing miracles that can defy what doctors may put that label on. Yeah. Let's move on and have you, Ferris, talk about the work. I think it might be frozen here. Hopefully we can get on. That's the technology for you. That we are pushing, trying to push through you. So why don't we, since Ferris, you highlighted on the screen, why don't you talk briefly a little bit? I know we're coming at about 27 minutes, so just briefly highlight the work that you do as a special needs mom.
So Wade was on staff at a church or at Elevation Church for 15 years. And so our definite ministry has always been like feeding the local church, like doing whatever we can at Elevation. And so when we ended up having our kids, a little bit after Sydney was born, I just felt like God was, saying this thing that you're walking through, it's not something to just be for your family. You need to share this. Then you need to, I'm getting like feedback on my voice, but you need to be able to, like walk along other moms that are dealing with stuff like this. So I was very nervous, but I started an e-group that was other moms that had children with special needs. And I just said, any special need, it doesn't matter what it is, just let's come and encourage one another and walk alongside each other and pray for each other. And so throughout the last, 9 years on and off, I've had different groups that, we had all kinds of different disabilities represented, like autism and cerebral palsy, cystic fibrosis, other ones that I hadn't even heard of that were different genetic conditions. And so it was really a beautiful how whatever you're going through, there's definitely fear, and you have a lot of people in your life that just don't understand either. I think that was a common thread is you would have people that just would be like, I would talk to my family and try and relay that we were going through this, and they just didn't get it. And so they would have, especially with when you have the like younger kids growing up and they have like autism, you have grandparents that might say, well, why aren't they talking yet? And they just don't get that there's a lot of just different things that you're going to walk through. And so being able to have a space where the ladies, the moms, were able to just like know that we understood and we were going to pray and we weren't going to try and fix things. We were just going to be there for each other was really, really special. So that was the main thing that I've been doing in, this season of having kids. So.
Awesome.
And I just love watching Ferris come alive doing that. And we, for a couple of those groups, we would have the husbands, and it was always a really, I think, just a helpful time of ministry too, because a lot of times a man might not be as willing to open up as a woman is. I know that's not true in all the cases, but in a lot of these cases, it was where the guys didn't have anyone to talk to at all, and they were afraid to even open up about how scared they were for their kids or how like they didn't know what to do. And so that was a really helpful. So we've felt drawn to really encourage parents who are raising children with special needs and to just let them know they're not alone.
Awesome. To share with us a little, I love that you guys are doing that, and share with us a little bit more, Wade, about your work as a worship pastor at Elevation Church and how you've ministered to those of us with special needs, and then also kind of tie that in with what can the church do to support people like your daughters and myself with special needs.
Yeah. So, I was on staff from 2007 to 2021 as the worship pastor at Elevation and help lead what became Elevation Worship and helped work with Pastor Stephen there on the worship experience and just got to do a lot of amazing things. I got to preach some there, and it really was a dream to help build the local church through Elevation. And then I felt like God calling me to step out in the last year or so. But at Elevation, I really just felt like the Lord gave me a platform to share our journey with a larger congregation and people that were listening from other churches. And I felt like it was a message that God gave me to steward of be open about what's hard and the times when your faith has been weak. Let people know that they're not alone when they're struggling. But then also I felt like God really wanted me to say, there's hope in Christ, and you're not defined by a condition. You're not defined by a label. You're an image bearer of God, and God can use what we might perceive as weakness to actually reveal his strength and to actually reveal something, like we said, beautiful. And so I tried to just be as vocal as I could when I would preach about what I was learning through our girls and through their challenges. And God was teaching me about his love and his grace. And so I've tried to continue that with the podcast and with a book that I have coming out in a year that's going to talk a lot about more in depth about the story of our family and the girls. And so I really think the church, just for anyone, needs to be a place where people feel like they can bring their struggle and their doubt and their frustration and their weakness and know that there's room for them there, that all are welcomed through the love and the grace of Jesus. And I think the more that we can tear walls down that might make people feel like, well, I've got to look a certain way or act a certain way, or, I've got to have my walls up and be the perfect Christian. No, come as you are. That's how Jesus wants you. And so I think that's, as the church, I think more and more we need to be less focused on image and more focused on, let's just build a community of people who want to run after Jesus. No matter what our life looks like, there's room for us here.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you said, and if more people get to know us, like get to know your daughters, get to know myself and others, then they will break down those barriers and see that we really are like what we talked about earlier with being walking miracles, that there's a lot that we can accomplish, that there's a lot that just like God gives gifts to everybody, he gives us strengths that we can, like what we talked about earlier, will take in those challenges, turn it into those strengths, and I think that's kind of going along with what you said, Wade, that's a lesson that we can keep sharing with other church leaders, other people in the church as well. We're going to go ahead and take a short break. I am going to bypass the last break, so we're going to combine the last 2 segments for the sake of time. So all of you listening don't have to listen to us for 2 hours long, because that's can be sometimes a little long, and we want you all to get back to the rest of your family and the rest of your lives. So I guess Wade and Joye Ferris, we will be back right here on SpecialChronicles.com after this short break. And here we go. Please. Please. ComEd is about now. And I think it's powering lives, and really is powering us here at Special Chronicles to keep the lights on and our support for Special Chronicles comes from ComEd. Special Chronicles is proud to partner with the ComEd Energy Force Ambassador Program. The Energy Force is the country's first energy efficiency education program designed for and taught by people with disabilities. ComEd is powering lives, and really is powering us here at Special Chronicles to keep the lights on and our technology is powered on. As ComEd powers the lives of us, they're literally giving a voice to people with special needs. We thank ComEd for the generous support of our mission at Special Chronicles. Learn more at specialchronicles.com/ComEd. That's specialchronicles.com/ComEd. And we're back. If you see us, hopefully on screen, if the video catches up. This is Daniel. This is episode 496. I guess Wade and Ferris Joye. And so, we'll, as this kind of final 2/1 segment, we're going to have you talk about your podcast and newsletter. But first, I want to kind of let our listeners know. We'll put links in the show notes of where you can subscribe to Wade's podcast. But the Dreamers and Disciples is a weekly podcast to explore how to reset your rhythms and renew your dreams by fulfilling God with the dreams in your heart through regular rhythms of abiding in Christ. We will learn what the Bible really says about purpose, calling, and trusting God with his disappointment as we dream the way a disciple does with open hands of surrender. And I'm sure, Wade, you could explain, but tell us a little bit kind of why you wanted to be hosting a podcast and kind of a little bit about the mission. And then, Ferris, if you want to also kind of add to Wade as well.
Well, the podcast really was born out of a journey of the last 2 years of, number one, just God giving me more and more of a passion to teach what I was walking through in my faith and what Ferris and I as a family were walking through as we stepped out into this new venture. But really it's a passion of mine right now, because I think in the body of Christ today and in the church, a lot of, and we have this ideal picture of what our dream is and what our purpose is supposed to be. And life rarely looks like that ideal picture. And so if you've attached your purpose to this dream you have and you never get that dream, then we can feel discouraged and like we've lost our purpose and like we can't make an impact. But instead, I believe that God has given us a purpose that we can carry with us into any situation, into any trial, into any challenge, into any difficulty. And we can actually carry God's dream for our life when we open our hands as a disciple and say, God, I'm going to walk through this challenge, with special needs. God, I'm going to walk through this challenge. Even though I don't get the thing that I want, I still feel like I can glorify you in this season right now. And so hopefully the podcast is a way to encourage people to not just think that they're going to be used by God one day out there when everything is perfect, but to actually realize they can be used by God right now, no matter what they're going through.
Awesome. And I don't know if you want to comment on, if when listeners listen, you'll know that Wade, you hosted by yourself, but I don't know if Wade, if Ferris, if you want to comment on listening or kind of seeing your husband's process of
yeah, it's just been really encouraging to see Wade step into this. And I've just been really proud, a proud wife. And I feel like he has just so much wisdom to share. And just God, we've had so many different seasons of, doing different church stuff and having our daughters. And so I feel like he is just taking everything that God is teaching him and helping just share that with others and the journey that, he's been on and our family's been on. So it's just really cool to watch. And I'm just really proud.
Awesome. And
one of these days, I'm going to talk Ferris into coming on the podcast.
I was just
You're actually my first podcast. I've never done a podcast before, so I am very honored to be here.
Well, thanks, and yeah, I'll look forward to hopefully hearing you on Wade's podcast. This next question, I'm sure. Could be an easy one for people that might listen to a lot of podcasts, but let our listeners know where they can find the Dreamers and Stuffers podcast. I'm sure basically like a lot of podcast apps, wherever you're listening to this podcast right now on Special Chronicles, you probably can also find Wade's show, but let us know.
You can find it there, or if you just want to go to wadejoye.com, remember to put the E on the Joye, Joye. You can find everything there, or just on Instagram at Wade Joye. You can find a link to my podcast in my profile.
Awesome. And I think I saw Ferris that you also put a link to Wade's podcast in your Instagram bio as well.
Oh, yeah, I did.
So,
I forgot I did it.
So so for those of you that are just listening to us on audio and don't watch us, are not watching us on video, you see it on the screen, but I'll make sure to put links in the show notes to your website, Wade, so people can check out your podcast. And then tell us briefly about the newsletter that you send out, the Weekly Reset, and about your ebook, and then maybe give us a little preview of. You said next year you're coming out with a new book. I'm hopefully. It's been a long process for me, but I'm in the kind of long process of writing a book myself, of kind of all these stories that I've been sharing and telling on Special Chronicles so yeah, I'll be curious to learn from you about the whole book process, but tell us about the newsletter and ebook and new book.
Yeah, so every Wednesday I try to send out an email just to encourage. I call it the Weekly Reset, just because usually the Wednesday in your week is when maybe all the stress and frustration of your week is caught up with you. And so I try to send an email just to help pivot our hearts back to the things of God. And so you can actually sign up for that email by going to wadejoye.com and downloading that free ebook, and it'll sign you up for the email. But the ebook is called 7 Rhythms to Renew the Health of Your Soul. And it just walks you through a way to evaluate just 7 key areas of your life and find a rhythm that works for you, whether it's your prayer rhythms or rhythms of health through community and relationships or church. It helps you see that, my rhythms might not look the same as yours. I might be more of a morning person when I pray. You might be more of a night person, but we all still need to pray and find a rhythm of prayer that works for us. And so this ebook has really helped. It's meant to help people figure out an easy rhythm to get started with in different areas that they might be struggling with. So you can get that at wadejoye.com. And they're all things that I've walked through and have been helpful for me. And then the book is coming out in fall of 2023. And I'm not sure if I'm allowed to even say the title yet. We're in the process of finalizing it. But I will say this. The book is centered around how to learn to live by letting go, and how to learn to live by letting go of your expectations and your dreams, and have your hands open for actually the dreams that God wants for you, and the purpose that God has for you, and realizing that it's when we let go that we find true life. And so if you listen to the podcast, there's a lot of similarities, but we also go in depth into a lot of this as well. So I'm excited about it.
Awesome. We'll have to have you back on the podcast on next fall to talk about your book when you can actually talk about it. I'll put links to your website, Wade Joye, that's with an E on Joy, in the show notes on specialchronicles.com. So wherever you're listening to this podcast, just click the link in the show notes and you'll find this episode 496, and then we'll put links to your podcast and website, Wade, as well as Ferris will put a link to your Instagram if there are any special needs moms that are listening and they want to connect with you. Is Instagram the best way?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Awesome. So before we get to that final question, any final thoughts on your overall time here today on the Special Chronicles show that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Well, I've loved getting to be on here just as a family for Ferris and I to share this experience with you. So I'm honored that you'd have us on, and I love that you are giving a voice to people who are experiencing challenges that not a lot of people understand, but they're challenges that God wants to use for his glory. And so I love that this is a space to encourage people like my daughters and people who are raising girls or boys like my daughters. And so I think this is a really special and powerful ministry that you have.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with everything Wade said. I just feel like, I think the more awareness we can have for any kind of disability or illness, the better. Just because I think a lot of people, like when we found out about Sydney having cystic fibrosis, we actually didn't even know what cystic fibrosis was. We were had to look it up and read about it. And so anytime like now I can find out more and have better understanding, I think that's really great. And so I think what you're doing is bringing that awareness for lots of different issues. And so we're just grateful to be part of it today, and just really excited for your ministry that you're doing through this. This is amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm honored that you guys have agreed to come on, and I'll try to find that episode for you guys with a young lady that that I'm sure you guys can listen, but you can also have your daughters listen to her story, because she walks through her entire story in that episode. And then, how I got started 14 years ago. We don't have time to get into the whole story, but healing, I heard some people that on other podcasts and other people in the community that really didn't understand the challenges I was going through, and as well as my friends, and kind of Special Olympics is a big impact on my life. That played a lot, but also just kind of sharing all stories. I have a bachelor's degree in journalism from in college, and so just kind of sharing our stories. There's been just so many people that have had a greater understanding and inclusion and acceptance and joy for the gifts that God gives us.
Yeah.
So speaking of inclusion, to introduce our final question, before we let you both get back to the rest of your day, and I'm going to hopefully get outside this afternoon. So we'll get a bumper so let's go ahead and board that bumper for the final question.
Peaceful protesters
in a rebellion against anyone
who has a fear of difference. Difference. Our demands are
equality,
dignity, and the recognition of our shared humanity.
We will not stop or accept anything less.
Today, our world is
more divided than ever.
And coming together has never been more urgent.
The revolution is inclusion. Find out more at jointherevolution.org.
So as a lot of our listeners know, inclusion and the inclusion revolution is a big part of the Special Olympics, but it's also a big part at Special Chronicles where we try to make sure to include everybody. And like I'm sure what you both are doing for your daughters, including your daughters in the church and in your community. But I always, for the past few years, ever since coming back from in 2019, ever since coming back from Abu Dhabi and our World Games that were over there in the UAE, I've been asking this final question, and it's kind of a perfect way to kind of sum up with just a final thought. And I'll do the same with both of you and ask, what does inclusion mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's remembering that first and foremost, we're all made in the image of God. We're image bearers of God. And so we're not defined by a condition. We're not defined by a challenge. We're not defined by what we do or don't do. We're defined by the fact that we carry the dignity and the image of our Father in heaven. And so when Jesus prays, Father, may they be one as you and I are one, like, it's his desire for the church to come together as image bearers of God in unity. And when we exclude different people based on, the way they look or something that they're struggling with or whatever, then we are excluding an image bearer of God, and we're not able to learn from them, because I think it's when we come together as one that we're actually able to learn from each other. And there are things that that I'm incomplete with if I don't learn from somebody else who might have special needs, and they've got a strength and a trust and a dependence on Jesus and a perspective that I don't have, but I need. And so inclusion is actually us all growing together as image bearers of God as we learn from one another.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to kind of preach there.
No, always.
Well, I think the same thing. I think too, like, I think about the body of Christ and how we are all having different types of roles to play, but we're all meant to do it together. And as we walk into this like special needs community, we're here to help each other, right? So there's going to be all kinds of different ways that people have to overcome an illness or a disease, but we're supposed to be doing it together and doing it alongside each other. And I think about, if you talk about the body of Christ again, like if you have, a pain in your neck, your hand goes to rub your neck, right? Mm-hmm. So it's the same way, if someone is hurting in our body of Christ, that it's our job to always come alongside each other and help one another out. So I think that extends to past special needs community, but also within it. And so I think that's definitely how we can include each other too.
Awesome. Well, that's a perfect way to wrap up this episode. I'm sure a lot of our listeners have learned from your story with your daughters, and wish we had more time, but we'll have to have you both back on next fall when Wade, your new book it comes out, so you can share a little bit more about your book, and as well as an update on the journey with your daughters.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I'd love to.
So
thank you for having us. This has been so fun. We've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, no problem. So I want to just remind the listeners, go to specialchronicles.com for links to follow Special Chronicles on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn. Subscribe and rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to our newsletter there. I also have a mailing list so you guys can find links in the show notes for this episode. specialchronicles.com/podcast496 is where you can find all the links to Wade and Ferris and Wade's podcast and website. So thank you again both. It's been a joy and a blessing to share this conversation with you today. So
thank you.
And until then, you guys, we'll see you next week. Take care and God bless. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Special Chronicles Shows podcast. Visit specialchronicles.com to follow Special Chronicles on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube, and don't forget to hit the bell to be notified of new episodes. Also, subscribe to our newsletter mailing list to sign up for our updates and get exclusive content delivered to your inbox. Remember to do what you do with these podcasts. Subscribe or follow and rate and review Special Chronicles on Apple Podcasts, the iHeartRadio app, or wherever you get your podcasts. Finally, please share this episode and all of our podcasts with your friends and family. Help us grow our audience and reach 5,000 downloads of our audio podcasts and over 14,000 average monthly listeners. Have a great week, and we'll see you back here next week with exciting new guests. See you next week.
Special Chronicles, giving respect and a voice to people with special needs.